All right, so welcome to Inclusion for, Mentoring for Inclusion and How to Leverage Organizational Culture for Competitive Advantage. I am Kim Creighton. I encourage you to tweet, please. I live on Twitter. So tweet any very good insights that I may have. There will be many. And share them with the world. You can use the hashtag #CauseAScene because that's what I'm doing in 2018. I am strategically disrupting the status quo in our technical organizations, communities, and events. So that's what that is. That's me. All right, so I always put my credentials up there. May not be so much because of the culture here at MailChimp, but I always put it up here because I know I'll be sharing this, because there's always someone in the room who's asking, why should I be listening to this black lady? And this is why you should be listening to this black lady. I have over 25 years of working with learners of all ages. I'm actually a certified special needs teacher. I taught high school. I have a master's in training and development, which means I worked on curriculum, workshops, all kinds of things. I'm currently finishing up a doctor's of business administration, technology, entrepreneurship. My research title is Successful Strategies for Increasing Organizational Knowledge Sharing. My research question is, what mentoring strategies do successful software development leaders use to increase organizational knowledge sharing? And the book I'm writing is what this presentation is about, Mentoring for Inclusion, How to Leverage Organizational Culture for Competitive Advantage. So this is what the problems are. So the costs associated, we have the HR person here, of recruiting and retaining continue to rise. We know that. Particularly when we're talking about in tech, how we need underrepresented and marginalized individuals in tech. We're bringing them in and they're leaving because we're not changing our cultures. We're not doing anything. So every time you recruit somebody from an underrepresented or marginalized community and they don't feel welcome, they leave. And so that's cost that you've wasted. Unless you've learned something and can do better the next time. Organizational leaders reported that ineffective mentoring is causing is costing them $31.5 billion. And that's because if Osa knows how to do his job and he leaves this company, everything that's in Osa's head goes with him if he has not been able to share that information. And leaders cannot use that information to develop strategies for differentiation and competitive advantage. Also, with the fast pace and uncertainty of this economic climate, people are turning to strategies for effectively using or effectively sharing knowledge, and mentoring is just one of those things that seems to work. So I'm an educator at my heart, and so I love to define terms because I believe that we all need to be on the same page when we start. So when I get into my talks and when I'm having a conversation with somebody over coffee, 30 minutes later, they're not looking at me crazy because we've already defined terms. And because this is a talk about inclusion, those are the terms that I like to define. So for me, privilege is about access. So when people ask me about what's privilege, it is you have access. So I am not I don't know, the Little Rascals just came in my head with the women hating, the girl hating thing where they didn't let girls in their club. So I'm not a white male basher at all. I'm not a white woman basher at all. What I'm saying is you have access to networks and opportunities that people from underrepresented and marginalized communities don't have. So if I go to India, the class that would have access is different from in the United States. I try to use terms that are universal, that can be, you can use them anywhere. So it's not about segregating or pointing out a different group. It's wherever you are located, there's someone of privilege. That means they have access. Underrepresented is about numbers. So I like to talk about this because when people say women are making gains in tech, what they need to be clear about is white women are making gains in tech. Women of color are not making gains in tech. They are actually falling behind. So we need to be clear when we're talking about defining terms. Marginalized is about treatment. So I am a person who is both underrepresented in tech and marginalized in tech. So I have both, and that's about being mistreated. Diversity is about variety. And I love to use the analogy of when you had the Crayola box, even if you had the 4 count, the 8 count, the 16, 30, I was the only child, so I got 64 count crayons. I had variety. Inclusion, though, is about experience. You can have all the variety sitting at a table if you want, but if their voices aren't heard, if they don't matter, they're not included. So to me, the holy grail is inclusion. That's where we need to get to. But we have to go through these understanding of these other levels to get to inclusion. You can't jump there. And this is the challenge that a lot of people are having. Inclusion is not a wedge issue. It's not a political issue. It's not a moral issue. It is not a we should be doing the right thing. It is a business and an economic issue. You cannot create products and services for a global market from 1 or 2 perspectives. It's just not possible. That's the benefit of having diversity. And then when those diverse people feel a part of the team, that their voices and opportunities and their perspectives matter, that's when you have inclusion, and that's when you create the best kind of knowledge that can be shared. I also like to give a definition of the differences between coaching and mentoring, because a lot of people get this confused. Coaching is specific to a job. It is, I have a widget, I'm going to teach you how to create this widget or use this widget. Mentoring is about overall professional development. It's about the person growing, not about growing into that job, but over a career. And we need to be mindful of that. And I say that because I've been having a conversation with some people at Stack Overflow, because they think they've done a mentoring experiment when in fact they've done a coaching experiment. And when you use terms incorrectly, particularly if you're using a scientific or you're doing research, that is not sound research. You have to use the correct terms based on, we can't just change definitions, and I see that often. That's why I like to do the definition things, because people like to change that. It's like, no, let's just Google what this means. Let's not just change the definition. So my research is based on learning organization theory. And it was Peter Singh who developed the theory of the learning organization, which is different from organizational learning. This is an organization based in learning. And so the principles of this are, you have to think systematically. That is one reason a lot of initiatives when it comes to mentoring or inclusion or whatever are failing, because we think in silos. Marketing makes a plan, they don't inform sales, and then sales is like, why did they do this? It screws up my whole thing, because they haven't thought about the system. They haven't thought about the different things that that one decision can make. If you think about your human body, when you eat food, it affects not just your tongue, your teeth, it's your whole digestive system, plus your blood system, your sugar enzymes, all kinds of things. You have to think systematically for these things to work and for mentoring to be impactful. It's about personal mastery, a discipline of clearly clarifying and deepening personal vision. I have to have a belief that it is my responsibility to improve. It is my personal responsibility to master whatever it is. I'm learning to drive, I want to study this new religion, whatever it is. It's about personal mastery. Mental models is a deeply ingrained assumptions and influences of how we understand and see the world. And this is, and then how we act. This is where many people get caught up, and you see it on Twitter in these conversations and these arguments that happen, because they're focused on their mental models. But if you thought about the system, you would less likely get caught in the mental models. And this is why these things have to go together. Shared vision. It's about the team. When you're being inclusive, when you're doing mentoring, it's about the goals of everybody that is shared. And then team learning, the capacity of teams to do something together that no individual could do by themselves. I've always had an issue with the term competition, and I did not understand it I understood it, but I didn't understand that it was a business thing until I started studying Peter Singh and this this theory because I've always said, I use this as an example, competition, if we put a bunch of Skittles on the table, somebody say, I don't like red Skittles, so we get rid of the red Skittles. I don't like the orange Skittles, so we get rid of the orange Skittles. I don't like the yellow Skittles. So what we're left is something that no one wants, but it's just what, we just carve this thing up. But what if we put the Skittles on the table and we started creating something together that we couldn't create by ourselves? That's why I love collaboration. That's the essence of collaboration, and that's the essence of inclusion. So, in an industrial age, we placed the value on what you could do. So, coaching was necessary. That's how mentoring was very rarely in businesses in the industrial age in the level that it was for mentoring people into higher levels of the company. But it wasn't just your every average employee getting mentored. That's not what happened. Somebody saw some potential in you, wanted to put you on this track, and they would mentor you. Now it's about, we live in the information age. It's about what you know. And I used to tell my students that all the time. It's like, dudes, first of all, school is an artificial environment. Nobody in the world works like this. Nobody's testing you every day. No one cares about your GPA. And we really need to tear that system down. But since they're not, I moved out of it. Because what needs to happen is like this building, these chairs, the equipment is seen as an asset. In the information age, the knowledge is also equally an asset and a more precious asset than that, because I can replace that. But if I haven't shared this, I can't replace that. So I also like to talk about the difference between information and knowledge because they're not the same and we use them as interchangeable. One of the reasons I did not want to go get a doctorate is business administration. I am not one of those people who was in love with going to school, although I'm a researcher. I pursued a doctorate of business administration because I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but even with all the information on Google, there was nothing structured to help me translate that information into something that was useful to me. And that's what mentoring is. So people have tons of data. You guys have tons of data, but if there's nobody at MailChimp to analyze that data, to make sense of that data, and align it to some certain goals, that data means absolutely nothing, and it's just taking up space. Information also comes from the exterior. It's something that comes externally, and it is explicit, and we'll talk about these terms in a minute. Knowledge, on the other hand, is structured information. It's internalized and it's tacit. So for me, you have to turn information into knowledge for it to be an asset. And what is the vessel that turns that information into knowledge? The human. Because Osa could tell me something, but until I start working with that and internalize it and make it my own, it's just information. When I make it my own, it becomes knowledge for me. So it has to process, it has to do something. So let's talk about explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is, HR has plenty of that. They have handbooks, they have manuals, they have how to do, they have that thing that can be codified, written down, and shared easily is explicit knowledge. Coaching is best for that. This is your job. I need you to get from here to here. This is how we're going to do it based on these steps. And usually there's a manual. There's something that you can do. Tacit knowledge, on the other hand, is that it's very hard to codify. It's the lived experiences of people. And how do you manage that? How do you document that? So speaking of documentation, so you have a QA department. You have support here. That's explicit knowledge. How that support person explains that to the customer is tacit knowledge. Because what they've learned sitting on that job is when I get this kind of question, this is how I need to answer that kind of question. They didn't have that on day one. What they had on day one is this is the tools or the resources I had at day one, and I'm just working through it. But over time, and you do it yourselves, I know someone can say, Kim, collate these things. The first few times I go around, I really don't have. It's just like, okay, I'm just collating. But by the time they come back, I got a system, I got the staple here, I got this table, I got it, because I've internalized it and I've created a system for myself, and now that's my tacit knowledge of how to get this project finished. All right, we're talking about, this is from this year's World Economic Forum. If you look at 2015 and 2020, the skills that you'll need, the top skills, none of these are explicit skills. Think about this for a second. I just want to leave this up here for a minute. None of this comes from a manual. This is where schools are making a mistake. This is where businesses are making a mistake. This is where communities are making a mistake, and events are making a mistake. This cannot, complex problem solving. Where does that come? Where's the book for that? Judgment and decision making. That comes because you screwed up something and you learned from it, or you saw somebody. I was that person who see my friends do something stupid and was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I learned from you. I don't need to have that experience. I learned. Thank you for that lesson. But none of these things are about explicit explicit knowledge. This is all tacit knowledge. And this is where mentoring comes in. This is where mentoring is a benefit. This is where we're losing our kids in schools. And when we bring in underrepresented and marginalized people into our communities and organizations, how do we get them to do this so they feel a part of the organization? So I like to, again, define terms. Let's talk about the differences between personal mentoring and professional, and youth and adult mentoring, because this is very important. When I'm mentoring a young person, it's not about me. It's all about them, making sure they become tax-paying, law-abiding citizens and do it with the least amount of headache possible. It's all focused on them. So I find that when I'm doing that, I end up family counseling. I end up doing it's like this blob. You go in with this one idea, and then months later, you're invited to Thanksgiving dinner, and all. It's just like really messy. But it's all, and you do it when you don't want to do it. When I'm sitting in the bed, I'm like, I don't, but I have to, because I made this commitment to this young person, so this is what I'm going to do. Mentoring for adults is different. It's about usually gaining some success career-wise. It's focused on how do I get better at what I do. It's about acquiring and demonstrating skills and knowledge. It's mutually beneficial, where the mentor and the mentee but it has to be a relationship. No one wants to mentor or be mentored by someone they don't like. I don't have to take you home, but I at least want to be in a room with you. And adults can trade off. One thing you may know that somebody else doesn't know, and you can help them mentor them in that thing. And then they can say, oh, but I understand that concept, so let me help you with that. So it can be back and forth. Thank you. Personal mentoring. This is where a lot of people, and I explain these 4 quadrants because I see it in business a lot. I don't have time to mentor. This is going to be draining, da-da-da-da-da. So I try to explain this. Personal mentoring is, it can take any form. And it's unstructured and often, so this is my thing. Okay, yeah, get that out of the way. It's unstructured and often open-ended. As I talked to before, when I'm mentoring, let's say I'm at some organization and I'm mentoring somebody, it's a personal thing. Oh my God, they call you at all times. It's just, yeah, it's very open-ended. There's no cutoff date, and so people get really anxious about, I don't want to be here anymore, but I don't know how to end it, and that kind of thing. Professional mentoring should be thought of as like an apprenticeship program. It should be based on well-identified goals and objectives. And I'll talk about how you get there, but that's the difference between personal and professional. That's how you make sure that your mentee is doing what they need to do. You have the time to do what you need to do. If things need to change, it's not personal. I'm going to miss you, but blah, 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 that kind of thing. What mentoring is not? It's not one-off problem solving, as we talked about, because it's not coaching. It's not casual, and it's not static. Stack Overflow and Slack channels are not mentoring. My house is on fire. I need to put it out, the fire out, so I go to these channels because I need help right now. That's what that is. It is not mentoring. It's not even coaching. It's solving an immediate need. What mentoring is, it is a relationship. And that should be the key thing that you think about when you guys are doing things. Is there a relationship involved? And that would tell you if it's a mentoring, if it's true mentoring. Is there a relationship? Do I care about the development of this person? It's personal. Again, we don't have to go out to eat together, but I'm very intentional, and I'm concerned, and I care about your success. It's a commitment. I find often, this used to happen to me when I used to do, Tech 404, the Slack channel? Oh my God, I'm trying to do something in my code base, and then I had put my code up there, and they send me down a rabbit hole, and then they're gone. Did they die? Did they run to the bathroom? Are they off work? What is happening? They just left, nothing, and now my whole code base has changed. I don't know why. This does not happen in mentoring. And it's professionally transformational. This is one reason I started talking about mentoring when I started talking about developing developers, and why I'm focused on that in my research is because it is transformational. We talk about constantly, oh, we need more developers, oh, we need more technical people, but how do we transition that? How do we get people to not only come in, but stay in these jobs? So there are roles that show you, to prove that you're an effective, or that you can look to see how effective you are. As the mentor, you need to understand your role. It is vocational support, psychosocial support, and role modeling. And just by the fact of psychosocial support should tell you that this is a relationship, because you're helping this person develop. You also need to evaluate your motivation. And I say this all the time. A bad mentor is worse than having no mentor at all. And I repeat this. A bad mentor is worse than having no mentor at all. If you don't like people, please stay away from learners. If you don't have patience, please stay away from learners. The learning process for adults is, for young people, with pedagogy, there's a different process than when you're dealing with adults. Adults, now you brought in ego. You got somebody who may have been a professional in one thing, and now they're transitioning to this other thing, and they said they're learning the code. They know absolutely nothing. So they have very fragile egos. They need your support. And so you need to really evaluate your motivation. You need to also take an honest assessment of your time, your talent, and your temperament. And this goes also to, if it's required on your job, then your employer needs to make sure that they've provided time in your schedule to do this thing. Because if you're stressed out as a mentor, you're not effective. If you're in a mentoring situation and you have a stack of work to do, yet you have this person that you're supposed to be mentoring for and no one has provided you the resources to do that, it is not going to be a beneficial relationship for either person. And it's going to turn into a bad will toward the company as well. And you need to be able to set realistic goals, because the mentee does not have a clue. And I use development as an example, because everybody says, oh, developer, learning the code is easy. Oh, learning the code is easy. Oh, I'm so sick of learning the code is easy, because it's not. Not only is it challenging, but you're learning a new language. And developing a language is hard, and as an adult it's hard. And so because everybody's told you learn the code is easy, now you internalize that and you think you're stupid, because why can't I get this when everybody else is getting it? And these mentees and developers do not know how to make realistic goals for themselves, because nobody's being realistic about what it takes. So it takes a mentor to wherever you are to be able to set those realistic goals. Think about when there's a child, they think they're Superman. You encourage it to some point, but you don't let them go jump off buildings. And so you need to be able to set that realistic expectation. Mentees must understand that there's reciprocity involved. You're taking time, energy, and knowledge from somebody else. There is a responsibility there. You need to respect that person's time, you need to respect the relationship, and you need to go above and beyond if necessary to ensure that that person is not. So when I had a mentor, Toby Ho was mentoring me when I was learning the code. First of all, he told me stop learning JavaScript. He's like, it's just too much going on, and I wish people had told me that. He's like, let's do Python. Because it's so simple, it's a simpler language. You don't have all the, just to get JavaScript to run is curly braces and all kinds of things. Python, I was like, and it reads like a human language, so I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then I was able to I learned something, was able to actually turn my Python code and translate it into JavaScript. Man, I thought I was rocking and rolling. But I live in Riverdale, which is past the airport, and Toby lives in Alpharetta. I drove my butt to Alpharetta when I was not going to inconvenience him in any way. That was about our reciprocity. And also I had some identified goals. And after some time when I realized, you know what? I know enough about code, I can read it, but I have a skill set that's a gap in the industry that's what I'm going to fill. So we all often have mentees who come in, I want to be a web developer. Do you not know how vast and complex that is such a loaded question? What does that mean? Because they don't know what that means. And so you're going to have to guide them into figuring out what that means. So reasons why organizations need effective mentoring. Business leaders need to do a better job at recruiting. Newbies have a difficult time leveling up, even if they go to boot camps, wherever if they've had a degree in marketing or whatever. As I've said, school is an artificial environment. There is very little that's reality from what they've done in school to what's real on the job. So it's like a big Grand Canyon, and they need help to get over. Since there are so many, few well-defined, there are few defined paths, people come at this with all different skills. Positive mentoring relationships improve mentees' level of organizational engagement and participation while lowering turnover rates. If a newbie comes into your company, it doesn't have to be a newbie. If it's somebody who wants to learn something, learn a new job here at MailChimp, and they feel that there's a relationship and they're supported, and I say this, and this is true, I've not heard anybody tell me this is wrong. An underrepresented and a marginalized individual will stay at a company they feel safe at, and money does not matter. We've lived crap lives. We've had crap experiences for too long that we know that money does not make a difference. Now, some of them will jump ship because they have to do this for financial reasons. But the majority are going to stay right where they are if they feel safe and protected in that environment, and if there's places for them to grow and opportunities for them to learn, and they're going to go out. Denise, when she came to this company, that is your best ambassador. That's all she talks about is MailChimp. And because she believes in me, she then told them about me. This is how you get these relationships going. This is how you get this knowledge. And so Denise is not going anywhere anytime soon. And also effective mentoring enables leaders to scale organizational knowledge. So how do I get it from here to get it to you? And so that now at least two of us have it. So now we need to figure out, okay, now we need to expand and scale that so that if it's something that can potentially help the whole organization, how do you scale that? So what does mentoring for inclusion looks like? It's rooted in organizational core values. So this is where when I'm coaching businesses, I love starting with entrepreneurs who haven't started anything yet, because unfortunately we live in a culture that believes that a product or service is a business, and a product or service is a product or service. It's not a business. It's not a business unless there's a system around it, policies, processes, and procedures in place to help it scale, help it recover when there's an issue, and help it grow and learn. And so I love starting with new businesses because there's organizational culture. We sit down and we define What is the thing that you're going to base all your decisions on? And then mentoring has to have its own core values that are rooted in the organizational core values. So they're not just out there, and you have to know why you're mentoring. Not just to say you have a mentoring program, because that's a waste of people's energy, time, and resources. So you have to have clearly defined understanding why you're mentoring and know what you expect the outcomes to be once you're done. And you have to consider all stakeholders. How does mentoring benefit our employees, the people we partner with, the people who buy from us, and the people who may invest in us? See, again, we're thinking systematically. It's not mentoring just for this person. If I'm mentoring this person, how does that trickle throughout throughout our ecosystem and helps us long-term and widespread? And you do that by project-based learning. So let's hope this works. Oh, is this going to be, you're going to be able to hear this? Nope, never mind. It's in the, it's a video about what project-based learning is. So let me just go back, because project-based learning is what I think is the best environment for mentoring. You're already working on projects. And this is where, again, schools are getting it wrong, because they have people studying for tests or whatever. Many of them are not challenging their own assumptions. They're not learning from their mistakes. But projects are the best way for you because they're objective. They're not subjective. If you tell me you know how to do a Twitter campaign for this new thing we have, then there's some identified outcomes I need to see for you to prove to me that you know how to do that. That also helps me as the mentor say, okay, they did that well, we don't need that, but oh, they didn't, so we need to go back. It helps you figure out what you need to review and what you need to help them learn. It's very objective. And so this is my pet peeve. Impostor syndrome, I don't know why we need to label ourselves all the time, is only valid if you're a person who has the experience and the knowledge to be a professional and you still don't believe that you can do your job. Somebody learning cannot have imposter syndrome because they don't know nothing. And I say that over and over again, particularly to developers, because they've taken on this, I see it all, oh, I'm just suffering from imposter syndrome. And then I ask them, so what do you do? So you have a job at this? No, I just started coding 30 days ago. You do not have imposter syndrome. Learning is hard. And that's the issue. We've make it seem like learning is the easiest thing in the world. No, it's 2 steps forward, 10 steps back, 2 more steps forward, and at some point you're going to get there. But that's the process, because you have to connect things together. So if I'm learning, if I want to write an essay, how do I start writing an essay? I have to learn my alphabet first. I don't just start writing an essay. I'm really going to be frustrated because I don't even know what an essay is. So I need to learn my alphabet first, and then you start, what do? You connect letters together to make words. And then you make simple words. And then, oh my God, you make phrases because there's no punctuation. So now you have a phrase. And then you have a sentence. And then you have a paragraph. This stuff takes time. And this is what the problem is with inclusion. People think these one-off things, put up a code of conduct, do mandatory unconscious bias training. That's going to do something. These things are not one-offs. It's a system thing. So if you are learning, you do not have imposter syndrome. So this is what I usually like to do, and I don't know how this works here, how this will work, but I would like for individuals to just think of one. I used to say 3, but think of 1 strength and 1 weakness. Put yourself in the role of either a mentor or a mentee. Because what I like for people, you have to feel what it's like to be in something to really empathize with that person. So is there anybody in the room who wants to give me a strength or a challenge in one of those areas? If not, that's fine. Yes. Okay. CSS. Okay, so you doing CSS? So what role are you in? A mentor or mentee? Mentee? Okay, so if you had a mentor and you knew that your strength was public speaking and your challenge was CSS, ooh, I get really creative here. Okay, so what I would do as your mentor, I would make you apply to a conference and create a talk, and you would have to learn, and you would do live coding. Because they're identified points. You don't have to do live coding because sometimes it's not about you, but sometimes that just does not fly well, people's laptops or whatever. But that would be a goal. That's the goal. You apply to Connect Tech. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, right there, because you were at my workshop, and the CFP just opened. So you need to apply to Connect Tech, and one of the people here who's good at CSS will help you come up with a proposal which helps you learn CSS something about. Because again, it's not the whole thing, because you need ABCs, right? Some concept about CSS that other people aren't talking about, and so it's novel. And then you're learning something really unique, and then you can go on the stage where you can do the thing that's your strength. How can you not feel good about giving a talk about CSS when you come at it from that point of view?